Hi there. My name is Ryan McMahon, and this is my examination of 21st century Australian education. Now, there's no question that society is changing, and therefore it's very important that the field of education continues to change with it. And we need to make a point that the learners of today, they're not the same as the learners from previous generations. Mark Prensky makes an important distinction in that the learners of today are called digital natives because they've grown up with technology and they speak the digital language of computers. Whereas older generations are known as digital immigrants, they can adapt to technology, but they leave an accent when they use it. So what this means is 21st century students, they need 21st century teachers. And these are teachers that understand how to build relationships with these students, and they focus on guiding students in how to use technology and helping them develop skills that are very important for success. Now, the National Education Association has stated that there are four skills known as the four C's that are highly important in 21st century. And the need for these skills has changed over time, as has how we perceive them. For example, critical thinking was once considered to be something that only gifted individuals were capable of, but now we realize that it's a skill all individuals need to have. And with communication, we've always been able to communicate, but in the 21st century, we have many more forms of communication, such as social media, that didn't exist in previous generations. And with collaboration, in the past, we used to work individually, but nowadays we work much more often in groups. We need to work collaboratively, so this is a skill that is definitely essential. And then finally, creativity. This used to be viewed as a secondary skill, but we're starting to realize that all individuals need to be creative and think outside the box in order to be successful. Now, these four C's can be developed in any subject or learning area when we consider the right approach to use. In one of my chosen areas, so digital technologies, an approach I consider is the constructivist approach. And this views learners as active constructors of their knowledge. And we apply this through a concept known as the zone of proximal development. And the zone of proximal development looks at the distance between an individual's level of actual development, so what they can do without assistance, and their level of potential development, what they can do with assistance. And applying this theory links back to a statement I made earlier that we need to teach students how to use technology. We need to guide their use and help them develop skills for success. Now, another approach that I have considered is differentiated instruction. And I've considered this because it abandons the idea that one size fits all, and it considers students' strengths and it's accommodating of their weaknesses. Of course, this requires teachers to have a very substantial understanding of their students. And if we were to use this in conjunction with Bloom's taxonomy, which is assessment being determined by their increasing levels of cognitive complexity, then we're able to plan and hopefully see better learning outcomes and achievement. Now, in my field of psychology, a benefit is many of the theories that pedagogical approaches stem from, they're actually topics that are covered in the psychology curriculum. So therefore, I think it's beneficial to use one of those theories to teach psychology. So an approach I've considered is the behaviorist approach, and it basically says that the environment influences and reinforces our behavior. And we can apply this through token economies, where we provide or we remove tokens for behaviors that are either what we desire or what we consider inappropriate for situations. And I think if we were to combine this with the constructivist approach, we could be reinforcing the aspect of collaboration and getting students to see just how important that skill is. Another approach I've considered for psychology is the flipped learning approach. And in this approach, students normally access the information before class, and this is often done online. And then when they come to class, a discussion follows and unpacks the content in more depth. And why I've chosen this is I think this is a suitable approach for 21st century learners because technology is already a part of their daily life. So this digital delivery method is already one that they're very accustomed to. The current Australian curriculum exists as a developmental continuum of learning, and it refers to students learning and developing from foundational year all the way through to the end of year 10. And the Victorian curriculum incorporates several aspects from the Australian curriculum and still reflects the priorities of the state. Now, there have been many events that have occurred that have influenced the development of curriculums. If we look at Australia, in 1848, the Board of National Education was founded, but control was still left up to a clergy of religion. In 1850, the University of Sydney was established, and this played a significant role in the development of grammar schools. In 1880, the Public Institution Act became law, and this allowed for primary and secondary schools to be established. In 1901, there was Federation of Australian States, and this meant that each state now had control of their education. And then in 1973, the Commonwealth Schools Commission was established. And now if we look at the Victorian curriculum, in 1970, a shift was made from centralized prescribed curriculum to a school-based curriculum. And in 2005, the Victorian Essential Learning Standards, or VELS, they were published. And now we look at both of these curriculums. In 2007, the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations was formed. In 2008, a new curriculum board was established. In 2009, the curriculum board became the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority. In 2013, the Department of Education replaced the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations. And in 2014, Foundation to Year 10 Australian curriculum was implemented in all states and territories. The current structure of the Australian curriculum can be described as three-dimensional because it highlights the importance of content knowledge, skills and understanding, general capabilities, and cross-curriculum priorities. And in every learning area or subjects, there's learning standards that describe the expected level students are supposed to be at, and each of these standards comes with a clear descriptor. And these standards are very helpful to educators as they assist them in developing learning standards that are intended to better student learning. Now, in Australia, we have standards known as the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers, and these are very useful for educators as they help guide and shape how educators conduct their practice. And some of the benefits I see from these standards is that they clearly define the crucial elements of high quality, effective teaching in 21st century schools, and they serve as quality assurance mechanisms in which educators can compare themselves and reflect on their teaching to see if there's any areas for improvement. And another benefit I see is that the same framework is used for teachers and pre-service teachers. So we're preparing pre-service teachers with the full responsibility before they actually become graduate teachers, which I think is very important. Now, within the Australian curriculum, one dimension is general capabilities, and these are expected to be developed across all learning areas. But if we look at the Australian and Victorian curriculums, you'll notice that there's a difference in the number of general capabilities. And the reasoning for this is VCAR believes that literacy, numeracy, and information and communication technology are so well embedded in all subject areas that they don't actually need to be their own distinct general capability. Now, before we had the general capabilities, throughout the 1800s, the Australian curriculum was more focused on the three R's, so reading, writing, and arithmetic. And then from the 1900s towards early 2000s, schools were actually forced to reconsider what they were teaching their students due to a social change and, of course, the ongoing technological advancement. So when we hit 2008, we finally got the general capabilities introduced into the curriculum. Now, how I would incorporate these general capabilities into digital technology, I see literacy in communication of ideas, concepts, and detailed proposals to audiences. And I also see learning to use specific terminology, increasing students' ability to use language flexibly. For numeracy, I see collecting, interpreting, and graphing data. And I also think that consideration of costs and time when making products and managing projects. For information and communication technology, I believe that's embedded throughout the entire subject of digital technology. So understanding and creating digital solutions is an overarching aim of the digital technology curriculum. So for critical and creative thinking, I see analyzing problems and engaging in computational thinking, and also developing reason and abstract thought through challenging problems that don't necessarily have clearly defined solutions. For the personal and social capability, I think working collaboratively in teams and making group decisions and sharing resources and resolving conflicts fits that category very well. For ethical understanding, I think applying ethical principles when collaborating with others and creating and sharing and using technologies. Also, understanding the protection of data, intellectual property, and individual privacy. In terms of intercultural understanding, I think considering how technologies are used in diverse communities at both the local and the global level, and recognizing and responding to challenges of cultural diversity by applying the appropriate social protocols. And when we look at psychology, because psychology is generally a VCE subject, there are actually no explicitly stated general capabilities for any year level beyond year 10. So my ideas on how the capabilities can be incorporated are as follows. So we have literacy, I think understanding the language, and it varies according to context and the purpose of using language flexibly. With numeracy, I think data representation and communication of findings. With ICT, I think researching science concepts, investigating scientific phenomena. For critical and creative thinking, I believe formulation and testing of hypotheses and evaluating and analyzing evidence. For the personal and social capability, I think learning how scientific knowledge applies to everyday life and expanding students' ability to question ideas and concepts. For ethical understanding, I believe applying ethical principles when undertaking research and also when dealing with sensitive data. And with intercultural understanding, I think learning to appreciate the contribution that diverse cultural perspectives have made to the development of scientific knowledge. So that's my analysis of the Australian education in the 21st century. Thank you for watching.